These are 20 hidden facts about the Big Valley that most fans have never heard. Secrets that reveal why this 1960s Western became one of the most trailblazing shows in television history. From a legendary actress who ruled her set like a queen, to a complete unknown who beat out Burt Reynolds for the role of a lifetime, to a real California ranch family whose tragic story inspired everything you watched on screen, the story behind the Big Valley matches the drama of the show itself. For 4 seasons, from 1965 to 1969, the Barkley family captivated audiences across America, but what you saw on your television set was only part of the story. What happened behind the cameras, in the executive offices, and on that sprawling studio lot tells us something extraordinary about Hollywood in the 1960s, about the power of one determined woman, and about a show that was years ahead of its time. So let's pull back the curtain on the Big Valley and discover the 20 hidden facts that nobody knows. Fact number 1. Barbara Stanwyck had unprecedented control over the entire production. When Barbara Stanwyck signed on to play Victoria Barkley, she wasn't accepting just another acting role. What she was doing was taking command of an entire television production in ways no actress of her era had ever managed before. By all accounts, Stanwyck ruled everything and everyone during those 4 years, holding final approval over scripts, guest cast, and directors. Think about what that means for a moment. In 1965, at a time when women in Hollywood routinely faced dismissal and were regularly overlooked, Barbara Stanwyck wielded the power to read a script and reject it outright, to scan a list of potential guest stars and cross names off, to sit down with a director and decide whether his work met her standards. This level of control was virtually unheard of for any television actor at the time, let alone a woman, but Stanwyck had earned it. Decades of film experience stood behind her, along with 4 Academy Award nominations and a reputation as one of the hardest-working professionals in the business. Producers understood that getting Barbara Stanwyck meant giving her the power she demanded, and she wielded that power wisely. Every script that reached production had passed her scrutiny, every guest star who appeared had received her approval, and every director who called action on that set understood that Barbara Stanwyck was watching, evaluating, and making mental notes about whether she'd ever work with them again. This wasn't ego at play. A consummate professional was ensuring that the show bearing her name would meet her exacting standards. Looking back at all 112 episodes of The Big Valley, the results of that careful oversight shine through in every frame.
Who do you plan to shoot, Miss Barkley?
I don't know his name.
Fact number 2. The Barkley family was based on a real California ranch dynasty. Here's something that might surprise even the most devoted fans of The Big Valley. The fictional Barkley family wasn't entirely fictional at all, because they drew inspiration from a real California family whose story rivaled anything the show's writers could have invented. The Hill Ranch of Calaveras County, California operated as a sprawling 30,000-acre cattle empire from 1855 to 1931. Parallels to the Barkley Ranch are unmistakable, but what happened to the Hill family makes this connection truly extraordinary. In 1861, ranch patriarch Lawson Hill was murdered, and his wife Euphemia, affectionately known as Auntie Hill, was suddenly thrust into running this massive ranching empire alone. She became the matriarch of the family and head of their cattle business, managing 30,000 acres and all the challenges that came with frontier life. Does that sound familiar? A strong-willed widow running a vast California ranch, raising her children while managing a cattle empire. That's Victoria Barkley's story, inspired directly by Euphemia Hill's real life. The Hills had 4 children, 1 daughter and 3 sons, and the Barkleys had Audra and her brothers, matching the structure exactly. Show creators had discovered their inspiration in California history and adapted it brilliantly for television. Tragically, you can't visit the original Hill Ranch today because the site now lies beneath the waters of Comanche Reservoir. A California state historical marker commemorates the Hill Ranch, ensuring that this piece of Western history isn't entirely forgotten, and the legacy of that real California family lives on through the Big Valley. Fact number 3. Lee Majors had 0 acting experience when he was cast. The story of how Lee Majors became Heath Barkley stands as one of the most improbable casting tales in television history. When auditions took place for the role, Lee Majors, whose birth name was Harvey Lee Yeary, had absolutely no professional acting experience whatsoever. None at all. Lee Majors was working as a park recreation director for the city of Los Angeles, holding down a regular job with a steady paycheck, and there was no particular reason to think he would ever appear on a television screen. And that's when Dick Clayton entered the picture, the same man who had been James Dean's agent. Clayton spotted something in this young man, something that convinced him Lee Majors could become a star. And he arranged for Majors to audition for The Big Valley, a new Western that ABC was developing to compete with NBC's Bonanza. What happened next seems almost impossible to believe. Between 400 and 500 actors auditioned for the role of Heath Barkley, including a young performer named Burt Reynolds who was already building a reputation in Hollywood and would later become one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Lee Majors, the park recreation director with zero acting experience, beat them all. Producers spotted what Dick Clayton had seen. Something about Lee Majors couldn't be taught in acting classes or developed through years of theater work. Screen presence radiated from him, that indefinable star quality that makes audiences want to keep watching someone. And so the man who had been organizing recreational activities for the city of Los Angeles suddenly found himself on set with Barbara Stanwyck, one of the most accomplished actresses in Hollywood history. Baptism by fire doesn't begin to describe it, but Lee Majors rose to the challenge and turned Heath Barkley into one of the most beloved characters in Western television.
I don't want no trouble, mister.
No trouble. Just a room, a drink, and some...
Fact number 4. The show's original title was changed at the last minute. Before it became The Big Valley, the show carried a different name. Producers originally called it The Saga of the Big Valley, a more epic-sounding title that emphasized the sweeping nature of the story they wanted to tell. But somewhere in the development process, a decision came down. The Saga of the Big Valley felt too long, too unwieldy, and it didn't roll off the tongue the way a great television title should. Right before the show went to air, they simplified everything. The saga was dropped, and The Big Valley was born. Titles matter in television, and The Big Valley works because it's direct, memorable, and evocative. It tells you exactly what you're getting, a Western set in a vast California valley, and the simpler title may well have helped the show find its audience more easily than that original, more cumbersome name would have. Screenwriter A.I. Bezerides and producer Louis F. Edelman created the show, with Levy Gardner-Lavin Productions handling production for 4-Star Television. ABC officially greenlit the series in February of 1965, ordering 28 episodes with a specific mission in mind, competing with NBC's dominant family Western format. That meant going up against Bonanza, one of the most successful shows on television at the time. The order was a tall one, but The Big Valley would prove itself more than capable of holding its own. Fact number 5. Barbara Stanwyck joked that she was playing Lorne Greene in a dress. Barbara Stanwyck carried a wonderful sense of humor about her role and the show's obvious similarities to Bonanza. When asked about the comparison between the two shows, she had a perfect response ready. "I'm just playing Lorne Greene in a Mother Hubbard," she quipped. What she delivered was a self-deprecating joke that acknowledged what everyone could see. Both shows featured wealthy ranching families dealing with the challenges of the Old West. Both had a patriarch or matriarch at the center of the action, and both followed the adventures of adult children, who got into various scrapes and predicaments each week. But here's the thing about Stanwyck's joke. It also highlighted what made The Big Valley different. She wasn't Lorne Greene, she was Barbara Stanwyck, and she brought something entirely unique to the role of Victoria Barkley. While Ben Cartwright served as a father figure, Victoria Barkley represented something television had rarely seen, a powerful woman running her own empire, making her own decisions, and commanding respect from everyone around her. The Mother Hubbard reference landed perfectly. That old-fashioned dress style was associated with practical, no-nonsense women of the frontier era. Victoria Barkley might wear beautiful gowns, but underneath that elegant exterior lived a woman just as tough and capable as any man on the Ponderosa.
Shut up.
Nothing. A mongrel pup-sired when your pa was drunk.
Fact number 6. Stanwyck spent 4 years trying to get a Western role before The Big Valley. Before The Big Valley came along, Barbara Stanwyck had actively pursued a role in a Western television series for years, but she kept running into the same obstacle over and over again. Madison Avenue was leery of women in Westerns, Stanwyck revealed. Advertising executives who controlled television in that era simply didn't believe audiences would accept a woman as the lead of a Western. Women could play love interests, they could fill supporting roles, but the lead? That was considered too risky, too unconventional, too likely to turn off viewers. For 4 years, Stanwyck pushed against this prejudice. Western films throughout her career had proven she could handle the genre, and she knew she could carry a Western series, but Madison Avenue kept saying no. And then The Big Valley appeared, and finally someone was willing to take the chance. Producers spotted what the advertising executives couldn't see, that Barbara Stanwyck was exactly the kind of star who could make a family Western work. Her combination of elegance, toughness, and undeniable screen presence was perfect for Victoria Barkley. The success of the Big Valley proved those advertising executives wrong. Audiences absolutely would accept a woman as the lead of a Western, and they loved it. Stanwyck's Victoria Barkley became one of the most iconic characters in television history, paving the way for other women to take on similar roles in the decades that followed. Fact number 7. Stanwyck's work ethic was legendary on set. If you want to understand why Barbara Stanwyck commanded such respect in Hollywood, you need to understand her work ethic. Showing up and doing her job was never enough. She set a standard that everyone else had to try to match. If Barbara Stanwyck had a 7 a.m. call time, she arrived at 5:30 in the morning. Consider what that means, an hour and a half of buffer time, every single day, without exception. She was never late, never rushed, never unprepared, and by the time the crew was ready to start filming, Barbara Stanwyck had been on set for 90 minutes, getting ready, reviewing her lines, making sure everything was perfect. But her professionalism extended beyond punctuality. At lunchtime, while other stars retreated to the VIP dining area where they could eat in comfort and privacy, Stanwyck did something different. Lunch meant sitting with the crew, not in a fancy trailer or a special dining room, but on the ground with her back against a truck wheel. They just loved her, recalled actor Earl Holliman. Everyone called her Missy. That nickname reveals everything about how the crew felt about Barbara Stanwyck. She wasn't some distant star looking down on the working people around her. She was Missy, a colleague, a friend, someone who understood that making a television show was a team effort and that every member of that team deserved respect. This combination of perfectionism and humility was rare in Hollywood then, and it remains rare now. Barbara Stanwyck demanded the best from herself, and in return everyone who worked with her gave their best as well. Fact number 8. Peter Breck had the fastest draw in television history. Peter Breck, who played the hot-headed Nick Barkley, brought something special to his role beyond acting ability. According to Wildest Westerns magazine, Breck could draw his gun in 16/100ths of a second. That speed is almost incomprehensible. Blink your eyes, and you've already taken longer than Peter Breck needed to pull his weapon from its holster. 16/100ths of a second made Nick Barkley officially the fastest draw in television history. Breck didn't stumble into this skill by accident. Constant practice honed his quick-draw technique until it became second nature. When you watch those scenes where Nick Barkley pulls his gun, you're not seeing camera tricks or creative editing. You're watching a genuine skill that Peter Breck developed through countless hours of work. This kind of dedication to physical authenticity was typical of Western actors in that era. They didn't just act like cowboys, they learned to be cowboys, at least in the ways that mattered for the camera. Breck's lightning-fast draw added a layer of realism to every confrontation Nick Barkley faced, making those moments of tension even more compelling for audiences at home. Fact number 9. Robert Mitchum discovered Peter Breck and lent him his Jaguar. The story of how Peter Breck got discovered sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. A George Bernard Shaw play was running, Breck was performing in it, and sitting in the audience was Robert Mitchum, one of the biggest movie stars of the era. After the performance, Mitchum walked backstage, found Peter Breck and asked a simple question: "Do you want to make a movie?" Just like that, Peter Breck's life changed forever. Robert Mitchum had spotted something in his performance, some quality that convinced the movie star this young theater actor had what it took to succeed on the big screen. It was the kind of chance encounter that aspiring actors dream about, but rarely experience. But Mitchum's generosity went beyond that initial offer. When Breck needed to relocate to Los Angeles to pursue his new career, Mitchum lent him his personal Jaguar for the move. This wasn't a casual acquaintance helping out. One of Hollywood's biggest stars was going out of his way to support a newcomer he believed in. That kind of mentorship was more common in old Hollywood than people might realize. Stars who had made it would sometimes take younger performers under their wing, helping them navigate the treacherous waters of the entertainment industry. Robert Mitchum spotted potential in Peter Breck, and he did what he could to help that potential become reality. Years later, when Breck was playing Nick Barkley on The Big Valley, he could look back on that chance encounter with gratitude. Without Robert Mitchum walking backstage that night, without that simple question and that borrowed Jaguar, television history might have turned out very different. Fact number 10. Richard Long never intended to become an actor. Richard Long, who played the sophisticated lawyer Jared Barkley, stumbled into one of the most accidental careers in Hollywood history. Acting was never the plan. Dreaming of seeing his name in lights wasn't something he did. What he needed was an easy class to help his grades. Long enrolled in drama class as, in his own words, a snap course for English credit. Passion for theater wasn't driving him, and hopes of being discovered weren't on his mind. Just a student looking for an easy grade. But fate had other plans. A Universal Studios casting agent happened to give Long's classmates a ride home from school, one rainy day, and Long was in the car. Something about this young man caught the agent's attention, and just like that, Richard Long was on his way to a career he never sought. It's a reminder that Hollywood has always operated on chance encounters and unexpected moments. The most carefully planned career can go nowhere, while someone who wasn't even trying can stumble into stardom. Richard Long's entire professional life, including his memorable run as Jared Barkley, began with a rainstorm and a ride home from school. Tragically, Long's life was cut short. Pneumonia contracted in his youth permanently weakened his heart. His first heart attack struck in 1961, years before the Big Valley even began, yet he continued working despite these health challenges, bringing depth and sophistication to Jared Barkley week after week. Richard Long died in 1974, just 4 days after his 47th birthday. Fact number 11. Lee Majors performed 95% of his own stunts. Lee Majors didn't just play a tough cowboy on television. Genuine willingness to put himself in danger for the sake of authenticity defined his approach to the role, and by his own account, he performed 95% of his own stunts on the Big Valley. This was unusual even by 1960s television standards. Most actors relied on stunt doubles for anything remotely dangerous, since insurance costs alone made it risky to have your lead actor doing his own action sequences. But Lee Majors insisted on doing the work himself whenever possible. One incident during the filming of an episode called The Death Merchant shows just how dangerous this commitment could be. Lee Majors and Linda Evans were rolling on the ground in a scene when the director unexpectedly fired a gun. The sudden noise startled Evans, and she jerked her head up at the exact moment Majors was ducking down to cover her. The collision broke Lee Majors' nose, and here's what the director said: "Let's get his close-up before it swells." They finished the scene with a broken nose, and Majors had to have surgery during the hiatus to repair the damage. But that kind of dedication defined his approach to the role. Heath Barkley wasn't just a character he played, it was a role he inhabited fully, even when that meant real physical pain. Fact number 12. Lee Majors turned down Midnight Cowboy because of the show. One of the most tantalizing what-ifs in Lee Majors' career involves the 1969 film Midnight Cowboy. The lead role in the film was offered to him, a part that would have represented a major step toward movie stardom. But a problem emerged. The Big Valley was renewed for another season, and Majors was contractually obligated to the show, which meant he had to turn down Midnight Cowboy. Jon Voight took the role instead. The film became a massive critical and commercial success, the only X-rated movie ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture, and Jon Voight became an overnight star, launching a career that continues to this day. Years later, Lee Majors reflected on what might have been. "I've spent more hours in front of the camera than he'll ever dream of, and made more money than he'll ever dream of," he put it. What he offered was a philosophical response to a situation that could have bred bitterness. Majors could have spent his life wondering what would have happened if he'd been free to take that role, but instead he focused on what he did achieve, a long successful career in television that made him a household name and brought him substantial wealth. Still, when you watch Midnight Cowboy and see Jon Voight's breakthrough performance, you can't help but wonder what Lee Majors would have brought to that role. It remains one of the great roads not taken in Hollywood history. Fact number 13. Stanwyck advocated for Linda Evans behind the scenes. Barbara Stanwyck didn't just mentor her younger co-stars through example. Active fighting for them when she thought they were being treated unfairly was part of how she operated. When The Big Valley became a hit, producers got a little too comfortable. Rather than investing in new costumes for Linda Evans, who played Audra Barkley, they started cheaply recycling her existing wardrobe. The same dresses appeared again and again, a cost-cutting measure that might have gone unnoticed by viewers, but didn't escape Stanwyck's attention. Stanwyck confronted the producers directly. "Is this show a hit?" she demanded. "Then my daughter would have new clothes, and while you're at it, she needs her own bathroom." Notice how Stanwyck framed her complaint. She didn't say Linda Evans needs new clothes. What she said was my daughter would have new clothes. Speaking as Victoria Barkley, she was fighting for Linda Evans. In Stanwyck's mind, the logic was irrefutable. The Barkleys were wealthy, Audra would have a wardrobe befitting her station, and the producers were undermining the show's believability by being cheap. The bathroom request was equally practical. Studios often skimped on amenities for younger, less powerful actors, and Stanwyck used her clout to ensure Linda Evans received the treatment she deserved. This advocacy created lasting effects on their relationship. Evans began visiting Stanwyck's Beverly Hills home every Saturday to rehearse scenes together. Over time, the professional relationship deepened into something more personal. Evans eventually came to think of Stanwyck as an actual mother figure, a bond that speaks to the genuine connection between them. Fact number 14. The Barkley mansion set came from a different movie than fans think. For years, fans have speculated about where the Barkley mansion set originated. Elegant Southern-style architecture reminded many viewers of Tara, the famous plantation house from Gone with the Wind, and it seemed logical that producers might have repurposed such an iconic set. But that's not what happened. The Barkley mansion set was actually repurposed from the 1955 film The Kentuckian, not from Gone with the Wind. Interestingly, a connection to Gone with the Wind did exist behind the cameras, just not through the mansion set. Director of photography Wilfred M. Klein, who shot 77 episodes of The Big Valley, had served as Technicolor Associate Cinematographer on Gone with the Wind back in 1939. The mansion may not have come from that classic film, but some of the visual sensibility behind the camera certainly did. The jailhouse set on The Big Valley also had film origins, repurposed from the 1955 film Gunsmoke, not to be confused with the long-running television series of the same name. Set recycling like this was common practice in Hollywood's golden age. Building new sets from scratch cost too much time and money, and if an existing set could be modified to serve a new purpose, studios were happy to reuse what they already had. For fans of The Big Valley, knowing that the Barkley mansion originated from the Kentuckian adds another layer of history to those familiar rooms and hallways. Fact number 15. A live timber wolf was thrown at Peter Breck. Some of the most dangerous moments on the Big Valley didn't involve guns or horses. Wild animals created the real peril. During the filming of an episode called Night of the Wolf, the script called for a confrontation between Nick Barkley and a wolf. Rather than using camera tricks or a trained dog made to look like a wolf, production brought in an actual timber wolf, and they didn't just have the wolf in the scene, they repeatedly threw it at Peter Breck from a rock formation. The paws were going every which way, Breck recalled. Picture that scene being filmed. Peter Breck, an actor doing his job, and a live timber wolf being hurled at him from above. The wolf, understandably confused and frightened, was scrambling with all four paws as it flew through the air, and Breck had to react authentically while hoping the animal wouldn't injure him. This was television production in the 1960s. Safety standards were different, animal welfare considerations were different, and what seemed shocking by today's standards was simply how things got done. The show needed a wolf attack scene, so they got a wolf and threw it at their actor. That Breck could recall the experience with what sounds like bemused acceptance tells you something about the toughness of Western television actors. Real dangers came their way regularly, and they took it as part of the job. Fact number 16. Charles Briles was drafted after only 8 episodes. One of the Barkley brothers had his television career interrupted by real-world events that no amount of star power could overcome. Charles Briles, who played the youngest Barkley's son Eugene, appeared in only 8 episodes before his draft notice arrived in 1965. The Vietnam War was escalating, and Briles was called to serve. The California Army National Guard became his destination, where he served until 1972. During that service, he was on duty during the Watts riots, one of the most violent civil disturbances in Los Angeles history. While his former co-stars were filming episodes of The Big Valley, Charles Briles was dealing with the very real chaos of a city in crisis. Producers wanted to bring him back to the show. Audiences had responded well to the Eugene character, and stories remained to be told, but budget constraints prevented them from adding another permanent cast member. The show simply couldn't afford to bring Briles back full-time, so Eugene Barkley was written off. The character was said to have gone to medical school at Berkeley, and after that explanation, Eugene was essentially forgotten. His name appeared only once more in the entire series. It's a reminder that even successful television productions operate within constraints. War, budgets, and timing can derail the best-laid plans. Charles Briles might have had a very different career if that draft notice had never arrived. Fact number 17. The show won the 1967 AAP Image Award. The Big Valley offered more than just entertainment. What it delivered was something genuinely forward-thinking in ways that weren't always obvious to viewers at the time. In 1967, the series received the NAAP Image Award, recognition for positive representation in media. This recognition wasn't accidental. Producers made deliberate choices to address issues of race and equality through their storytelling. One of the writers who contributed to this progressive approach was Robert L. Goodwin. Several episodes came from his pen, including one called Joshua Watson, that dealt directly with racial discrimination against black cowboys. Goodwin's significance extended beyond that single episode. He stood as one of the first black screenwriters in American television history. In the 1960s, when barriers in Hollywood stood even higher than they do today, Robert L. Goodwin was breaking new ground, writing scripts for a major network western. His work on the Big Valley helped tell stories that other shows wouldn't touch, stories about the real diversity of the American West. The Big Valley tackled many controversial topics for its time: race, class, labor strife, including episodes about the Molly Maguires, immigration tensions, prison reform, women's suffrage, Native American rights, and Hispanic rights all found their way into storylines. The Western format became a vehicle for commenting on contemporary issues, and the NAACP recognized and honored that commitment. Fact number 18. Barbara Stanwyck did her own stunts despite chronic back problems. Barbara Stanwyck's toughness wasn't an act. Chronic back problems plagued her throughout her time on the Big Valley, pain that would have given most people a legitimate reason to step back from physical scenes. But Stanwyck insisted on doing her own stunts anyway. "I just didn't want to play the part of a darling old lady with a lavender blanket over my knees," she explained. "To tell the truth, I think I'm a very frustrated stunt woman." That self-description carries both humor and revelation. One of the most acclaimed actresses in Hollywood history, and what she really wanted was to throw herself off horses and roll around in the dirt. The physicality of the Western genre appealed to something deep in Stanwyck's nature. Producers were understandably nervous about their 58-year-old star doing dangerous physical work. Executive producer Jules V. Levy admitted, "It really doesn't do us much good to protest because Barbara is determined." Determined is an understatement. When Barbara Stanwyck made up her mind about something, changing it was impossible. If she wanted to do a stunt, she was going to do that stunt, and producers could worry all they wanted, but ultimately they had to accept that Missy was going to do things her way. This commitment to physical authenticity helped make Victoria Barkley a believable matriarch of a working ranch. She wasn't a delicate flower who stayed in the parlor while her sons did the hard work. Out there in the dirt, facing danger, proving she was every bit as tough as anyone else in the family, that was Victoria Barkley. Fact number 19. Linda Evans photographed Evel Knievel's famous crash. Here's a piece of trivia that has nothing to do with the Big Valley itself, but everything to do with one of its stars being in an extraordinary place at an extraordinary moment. On December 31, 1967, Evel Knievel attempted one of his most famous stunts, jumping the fountains at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. The jump went terribly wrong and Knievel crashed, suffering devastating injuries that would have killed most people. Linda Evans was there that day, but she wasn't just watching. Her husband at the time, John Derrick, had recruited her to operate one of his cameras to film the stunt. When Knievel's motorcycle failed to clear the fountains and he tumbled across the pavement, Linda Evans was behind a camera, capturing one of the most famous crashes in stunt history. It's a strange intersection of Hollywood and daredevil culture. The woman who played the elegant Audra Barkley on television was, in real life, serving as a camera operator for one of the most dangerous performers of the era. The footage she helped capture has been viewed millions of times over the decades. Fact number 20. 3 different composers scored the show's 4 seasons. The music of the Big Valley changed more than most viewers probably realized. Over the course of 4 seasons, 3 different composers took turns creating the score. George Dooning handled the music for seasons 1 and 2, establishing the initial musical identity of the show. Season 3 brought a change, with the baton passing to Elmer Bernstein, one of the most acclaimed film composers of his generation. Bernstein's work included the scores for The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape, which meant the Big Valley was in excellent hands. For Season 4, Lalo Schifrin took over, bringing yet another distinctive style to the show's final episodes. This wasn't unusual for television of that era. Shows often changed composers as contracts expired or as producers sought fresh sounds, but for viewers who pay attention to music, these changes gave each era of the Big Valley its own subtle character. Themes might remain familiar, but the overall musical texture evolved as the show progressed. The series also featured 3 different versions of the theme song recorded over its run, and these variations reflected the changing musical leadership while keeping the show's opening credits feeling fresh even as the years went by. Now that we've explored these 20 hidden facts, let's step back and consider what they tell us about the Big Valley as a whole. This show existed at a fascinating moment in television history. Westerns still dominated, but their era was coming to an end. The Big Valley premiered in 1965 and ended in 1969, right at the transition point between classic television and the more modern programming that would follow. The show never cracked the yearly top 30 in the Nielsen ratings, and it debuted in the 39th position during its first week. By any conventional measure, it wasn't a massive hit, yet it ran for 112 episodes over 4 seasons, won Emmy and AACP Image Awards, and remained beloved by its audience. By 1969, The Big Valley stood as 4-star television's only remaining series. 70% of the company's total revenue came from this one show. The production company's entire business was essentially riding on the continued success of the Barkley family. Cancellation came primarily due to scheduling rather than a complete collapse in ratings. Competition from CBS's The Carol Burnett Show and the broader decline of TV westerns by 1969 sealed its fate. ABC wanted more modern series to attract younger viewers, and The Big Valley, despite its loyal audience, didn't fit that vision. But here's what makes The Big Valley remarkable when viewed from today's perspective. Modern critics have started calling it a proto-Yellowstone. Both shows feature wealthy ranch families, illegitimate family members causing tension, PTSD-afflicted veterans, and land disputes. The Big Valley was exploring themes in the 1960s that wouldn't become television staples until decades later. The show bridged traditional westerns and primetime soaps like Dallas and Dynasty, and Linda Evans herself would later star in Dynasty, bringing her experience from the Big Valley into a new era of television drama. The connection between these shows isn't coincidental. They're part of the same storytelling tradition. One final story deserves mention, even though it happened long after the original show ended. Between 2010 and 2012, a theatrical film reboot of The Big Valley was announced. Susan Sarandon was considered for the role of Victoria, then Jessica Lange. Ryan Phillippe, Richard Dreyfuss, and Bruce Dern were all attached to the project at various points. It seemed like The Big Valley might ride again on the big screen, and then everything collapsed. Director Daniel Adams was indicted for fraud. What he had done was falsify documents claiming that Richard Dreyfuss was paid $2.5 million when the actor had actually received $400,000. Adams faced additional SEC fraud charges in 2019. The reboot died, killed not by creative differences or lack of interest, but by criminal activity. For fans who had hoped to see The Big Valley return, the disappointment was bitter. The project that might have introduced a new generation to the Barkley family simply vanished. Whether another attempt will ever be made remains unknown. The success of Yellowstone suggests that audiences still have an appetite for wealthy ranching dynasties dealing with drama and conflict. Someday, the Barkleys will ride again. The legacy continues. Of the original main cast, Lee Majors and Linda Evans are still with us. Majors, now 85 years old, appeared in the 2024 movie The Fall Guy, alongside Ryan Gosling. Linda Evans, now 82, returned to acting in 2021's Swan Song. Charles Briles, who played Eugene in those first 8 episodes before being drafted, is also still living. Barbara Stanwyck passed away in 1990 at the age of 82. Richard Long died in 1974 at just 47. Peter Breck left us in 2012 at 82. Peter Breck actually attempted to organize a cast reunion in the late 1990s, and Lee Majors and Linda Evans were reportedly very excited about the possibility. A script was written, but Hollywood bureaucracy prevented it from ever materializing. The reunion that fans would have loved to see never happened.